First of all, I want to thank each one of you for being here tonight for a very special night, and welcome to our 2018 Athletic Hall of Fame banquet. My name is Lowell Hanson. I'm going to be your MC tonight, and I hate to say this because John Simcoe and Jim Lewis are here, but 61 years ago, we stood right over there and walked across this very stage as high school seniors. So we're pretty familiar with this environment. 4 years later, my wife Carol Fresvik, walked across this stage as well and got her diploma from Washington High School. So I can tell you that Washington High is in our blood. I'd like to introduce some very special people. I want to start first of all with our activities director here at Washington High, Nate Melchow. I'd like to ask Nate to stand and us to give him a round of applause. I can tell you that. Thank you, Nate. I can tell you that if it wasn't for Jenny Bream and Nate Melchow, we wouldn't be having this banquet because they are the heart and soul of our committee. Speaking of a Hall of Fame committee, I'd like to ask each member of our committee to please stand and give them a round of applause. Our chairman is Jenny Bream, and she and Lynn and Joyce do 90% of the work, I can guarantee you, and the rest of us just sit there and watch. I'd like to ask all former Washington High Hall of Fame honorees to please stand as well, if you would, and let's give them a round of applause. Finally, all coaches, whether past or present from Washington High, would you please stand? Thank you very much for all you've done for Washington High. Now, I know that I'm going to embarrass our senior table. I've already embarrassed them once by telling them that they're going to have to stand when I recognize them. But they're not here by accident. They're here because their coaches selected them because of their outstanding athletic abilities and also for their scholastic achievements. And we've got 6 of our best from Washington High here tonight. I'm going to introduce each one of them individually, tell you what sports they're in. I'd like to be able to tell you they're all 6 going to school at the University of Nebraska, but they've already told me that's not going to happen. We're going to start with Lily Bartling. She plays volleyball and basketball. She's an outside hitter in volleyball and plays post in basketball. Samia Jami is also a volleyball and basketball player. She's a middle hitter and also a post player. And I can tell you, I've watched both these girls play volleyball, and I'd hate to be on the other side of the net. Bryn Heinert plays soccer and basketball. She's a striker in soccer, and she's a point guard in basketball. Bryn? Jet Anderson plays football and basketball. He's a receiver and a forward on the basketball team. Jaden Johansson plays football and track. He's our quarterback, and he's a high jumper. I didn't necessarily save the best for last, but I can tell you that this next young man set a all-state rushing record all state, all football in the state of South Dakota, Tupac Capella, football record. I asked him what class he was going to wrestle at. He said, I'm 180, but I'm going down to 170. Yeah, right. Look at his body. Where's he going to lose 10 pounds? Congratulations to all you seniors, and thanks for being here. So on behalf of the men and women here at Washington High, as well as our Hall of Fame committee and of course the Sioux Falls School District, we welcome each of our new members into our Washington High School Athletic Hall of Fame. And if you think about it for a minute, the tens of thousands of young people that have graduated from Washington High over the years, student athletes, there's less than 200 that have been selected to be into our Hall of Fame, and 5 of them are here tonight. That'll give you a small idea of just how tough it is to get into the Washington High School Athletic Hall of Fame. And tonight we're here to honor 5, an outstanding football coach, along with a very special teacher and contributor, plus 3 very special athletes who have helped to advance our warrior spirit by adding to the many championships that they've brought to Washington High. The 5 honorees tonight that we're recognizing are Brian Hermanson, coach, retired in 2012. Jeff Herbert, contributor, retired in 2013. Dave Lubert, athlete, class of 1987. Tim Marlette, athlete, class of 2008, and Levi Smith, athlete, class of 2009. Before we begin the actual introduction and the induction ceremonies, I'd like to take a minute just to thank John Simcoe. John Simcoe has taken all of the photos for as long as I can remember. He's a Washington High School Hall of Fame committee member and also an honoree. He's also a South Dakota Athletic Hall of Fame member and a federal judge. So John, for all that you do for Washington High and have done, we thank you. And if we doubled your pay, you still wouldn't get anything. Each honoree tonight is going to receive a picture that John will put together and send to you the next month or two. It'll be of each of you as a group and individually along with your plaque. Before I begin my introduction, I'd remind you that even though my introduction is going to be fairly brief, if you look at your booklet, you'll see a biography, a more complete biography on each one of our honorees. And I want you to take notice, seniors, because tonight you're going to be introduced to 5 people who have shown that they're trailbreakers. They are the warriors who have gone to great lengths to prove that they are truly outstanding and special. And tonight we're going to recognize these 5 individuals as we put them into our Hall of Fame. And the very first of our honorees, frankly, needs no introduction. If you've watched Warrior football over the last several years, you know that Coach Brian Hermanson has been our head coach here at Washington High from 2005 through 2012 when he retired. And during those 8 years, his Warriors made the final championship game 6 times out of 8 and won 3 state championships. I know of no coach that's more qualified to be in our Hall of Fame than Brian Hermanson. Brian's a Sioux Falls product. He started out by attending Laura Wilder Elementary, went on to Edison Middle School, and graduated right here from Washington High. Coach Hermanson then went on to South Dakota State, where he played football and got his degree in education. His coaching career started at Brookings High and ended with 2 stints here at Washington High, with a stop in between at that school in the southwest part of the city, Roosevelt. During his last coaching position as head coach here at Washington High, his teams went 82-16, including those 8 trips to the Dome. But also during that period, his teams won the Greater Dakota Conference titles in 2009, 2010, and 2012. 51 of his Warrior football players went on to play college football, several at the D1 level, and one, Nate Gary, owns a Super Bowl ring and is still playing in the NFL. But even after having said all that about Coach Hermanson, the thing that really, I think, makes him stand out is the commitment to his students. As a phys ed instructor, he helped to mold and develop the character of his students at every level. His warrior spirit of winners never quit and quitters never win is something that he has instilled in every student athlete that he's ever coached. Brian has coached in 4 South Dakota High School All-Star football games. He's been selected Coach of the Year honors by the Greater Dakota Conference 5 times, as well as South Dakota Football Coaches Association honors in 2010. Brian and his wife Mary have 2 children, son Matt and daughter Kelly. Washington High School is proud to induct Coach Brian Hermanson into our Washington High School Hall of Fame. The formal induction will be by our activities director, Nate Malchow. Coach?
That's a long walk, John. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for that great introduction, Lowell. Also like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for selecting me for this fine award. It doesn't hurt to be on the Hall of Fame committee. As you can see, I'm on it. And so I definitely voted for myself. And also, congratulations to the other inductees. It's a great honor, like Lowell mentioned, to go through a school that has this much tradition to be selected for this. I'm going to have you do something. I kind of did this for my athletes a little bit. We kind of like, when you're an athlete, you'd like to think through the process. And I'm going to take you back a little bit. And you know, we get to go back a little bit, like 13 years. So I was a little bit younger. And then those of you that don't know me very well, I'm really a type A personality person. Type A, yeah, I am really anal. So I like to have my P's and Q's together. I'm not a guy that we're going to go out on the field at 6:30. I'm a 6:31 or 6:33. I do a lot of weird things. So anyways, it's my first year at Washington High, and everyone has to tell a story. So this is my story tonight. First year at Washington High, things are going great. Got a great staff, unbelievable kids. We're having a riot, and we're playing Rapid City Stevens. And it's a doubleheader at Howard Wood, and we're the second. And those of you that play football, you know that you go out on the practice field and you warm up while the other teams are finishing up their game. Well, I'm pretty pumped up, and I got a lot of energy. If you've watched a few football games, I fly around, high five, chest bump, get knocked over, whatever. So I get there, and you know, the school day goes great, and I'm like, wow, I'm stoked. I finally get to be a head coach, and I'm at Washington High School. And so the guys are all sitting there, we got music going, and for some reason, I lose track of time. I shut the music off, and I go ape in there. I just give this great speech. Everybody goes running out the door, and Coach Greg Folsom goes, "Hey, great speech, Coach, but what are we going to do for the next 2 hours?" That's how my career started at Washington High. Now, there's a lot of thank yous tonight that have to go out, and if I, for some reason, miss, I will apologize right now. But as those of you that have played for me and that have been around me, I'm a big quote guy. And one of the quotes I came across when I was in my journey through putting my scouting reports together and everything was that a successful man, it's something like this, a successful man there's always a strong woman in his background to help him out. And in my case, I was fortunate enough to have 2. No, I wasn't married twice. Okay? I had my wife Mary, and this is honest to God true. I applied for head coaching jobs 10 different times and got turned down. The Washington High job came up, and she convinced me, threatened me, that you better apply for that job because that's where you graduated. So I did. The second person that is really significant, young lady, is my daughter Kelly. And she had put up with a lot of crap. And the reason is she went to that east side school that is red and blue. And imagine that, going to Lincoln High School and your dad is the head coach at Washington High. A lot of crap she took. Finally, Matt, no, I did not forget you. Okay? Yeah, you're still #1 boy. Okay? Thank you so much for open enrolling. Like you had a choice. All right, now a little bit about what happened. In 2005, like I was talking about, it was April of 2005, and the Washington High job opened up, and I did apply for it. Unfortunately, I was lucky enough to get the job. And as things went on, you know, Kim did a great job. I replaced Kim Nelson. He's a legendary coach. He's also in our Hall of Fame. Washington High had a very, very strong tradition. They were predominantly a powerhouse football team, winning a lot of games. But in the playoff era, which I believe started in 1977 or 78, we had not won a state title. We'd been there a few times, but we hadn't won one. And over the course of the next 8 years, like Lowell mentioned, we were fortunate enough to win 3 state titles, and we were fortunate enough to appear in 6 consecutive championship games, which was phenomenal. Now, with success, we all know whether it's in business, raising your family, whatever it might be, and especially in athletics, head coaches and star athletes get a lot of the attention. They get the honors, just like the one I'm receiving tonight. There are a lot of individuals who play a very, very important role in this if you're going to be successful. And I'm going to give a big thanks out, and I want my coaching staff to stand up. Without you guys, go ahead. Anybody that coached for me or was part of my coaching endeavor, Curtis, Craig, you coached with me, stand up, because these guys worked extremely hard to make that dream come true. So thank you. Also, their families, the wives and significant others, please stand up. You had to sacrifice. Really, ladies, stand up. You need to be, yes. Yeah, thank you very much. You sacrificed the time that your husband had to give to the program and to our athletes, and I truly, truly appreciate that. The other thing, I really, really need to thank our athletes. We're honoring Tim Marlette tonight, and there's some other guys around here that were just phenomenal. And the one thing that I would say about Washington High, each and every athlete that we had accepted his role. They played a part in the success of Washington High School. And so I really want to thank the athletes that I was able to coach. Administration, faculty, and especially the student body. That 2005 to 2012, there was no other school like Washington High in the state of South Dakota that supported athletics. And it's still like that today. It is so unbelievable to see that Warrior Nation out there cheering on our teams. And kudos to that, and good luck to the football team the rest of the way out. Go win another one for us. Yeah. Now, in conclusion, probably the most important group to me was my family. They let me do something that I truly, truly love, and that's coaching and working with kids. And they sacrificed a lot of their time to let me do something that I truly love. So thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Congratulations, Coach. I think everybody can see why his teams were so successful. Well, this next guy's been called Mr. Washington High, and anybody that's had anything to do with our high school knows that Jeff Herbert truly is Mr. Washington High. And like Coach Hermanson, Jeff Herbert is Sioux Falls born and raised. And like Hermie, he attended Lower Wilder Elementary and Edison Middle School before coming to Washington High. Jeff received his degree in education at Black Hills State College in 1980, and then his master's from Southwest State University in 2001. With degree in hand, Jeff started his teaching career at Lee Deadwood. Jeff was hired to come to Sioux Falls by our legendary coach and Hall of Fame member Arnie Bauer to teach and to coach at Axtell Park. And when Roosevelt High School opened, Jeff was assigned to teach at Roosevelt, but felt the tug of his alma mater here at Washington High and came on board as a teacher and a coach. Jeff has taught at our high school for nearly 20 years, and during that time he coached for 8. Jeff was recommended to our Hall of Fame committee by his nephew, Trig Anderson, and in the letter, Trig pointed out that he has never seen such joy from one person as when Jeff is talking about his teaching, his coaching, or helping at Washington High. And I could spend hours, literally hours, talking about the many projects that Jeff Herbert has been involved in over the years, but there's 2 that really stand out in my mind. First of all, we wouldn't be wearing the Warrior jersey today if it wasn't for Jeff Herbert and then Principal Carla Midland, who spearheaded the effort to continue to use the Warrior mascot name. And secondly, we wouldn't be in this building today if it wasn't for Jeff Herbert and people like Jeff who took the baton in hand and carried the banner to preserve this old high school. Jeff is married to Sarah Neerman, and Jeff and Sarah have 3 children. Matt, class of '09, Lindsay, class of 2013, and Carson, class of 2017. Where do you think they all graduated from? Washington High. Our formal introduction for Jeff will be handled by our Hall of Fame Committee Chairman, Jenny Breen. But first I'd ask if Jeff would come forward and make some remarks. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a mere 45 years ago, about this time, that my good friend Stacy Sandvig Sanders and I stood on this very stage as homecoming candidates. And that same year, I was a student aide at Edison Junior High with a very youthful Brian Hermanson, who possessed just as much energy then as he does now. Herbie, I want to pad up tonight. So I'm going to give you a few history lessons. I'm going to talk about some people and things, and as Brian said, if I should forget somebody, please forgive me. Many years ago at one of our girls' basketball banquets, I forgot one of our girls' players, and I don't think she's ever forgotten it, nor have I. Before I begin, I do want to say thank you to the committee. I was on this committee for 6 years. I chaired the committee for 3. What an honor and pleasure, and what a job they do. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we don't realize and see, and they do such a fantastic job. So thank you for all you've done. On that committee are former students, former players, former coaches, and some darn very good friends, and I appreciate all of them. I also appreciate Steve Sievertson, because I teed him up in Y-ball when he was, I was reffing over there, high Y, and he was playing, and I thought maybe I'd get blackballed, but Steve, I appreciate you not holding that grudge forever. Ask him about that one sometime. The story changes almost every time we talk. Before I go on, I do want to introduce my family, and I appreciate Lowell doing that. I'm going to give him one more shout out, and I want him to stand. So my wife, Sarah. She's a Lincoln High graduate, but that's okay. Stand up, Sarah. My son, Matt, who lives in Washington, D.C. now. Stand up, Matt. My daughter, Lindsay, who's a nurse at Sanford. My son, Carson, who's a student at South Dakota State University. my father-in-law and mother-in-law, Dwayne and Lois Neerman, and Dwayne is the class of 1950 at Washington. Please stand up. My sister Jill, who's the class of 83. My brother-in-law, Chris Anderson, who teaches in the Sioux Falls School District and does some administrating. My nephew, Trig Anderson, please stand, Trig, who was one of the nominees, which I greatly appreciate. It stunned me, it floored me, and I'm sincerely honored by what Trig did. Jed Anderson, who caught a touchdown last night for the Warriors. Max Anderson, who celebrated the soccer championship last week for the Warriors. I'm surrounded by many good friends tonight, and a few of them I will mention. Again, I don't want to leave anybody out, but those are people that are very significant. There are two people here tonight who, well, I think they're with us, but they're not physically with us. It's my mom and dad. And if you read the inside of your program, the last few years we have dedicated the program to Kenny and Lois Herbert. Kenny was the class of 43. And Kenny, towards the end of his life, I said to him, it had to be a thrill to graduate on stage at Washington High, because this is where the graduation used to take place. No, he said, I didn't, Jeff. He said, I left in December and headed for the South Pacific. 17 years old. Think about it. He later helped form the Washington High Booster Club. In 1975, John Simcoe was a part of that also. Mick McDowell, Al Schock, Bob Burnett, Helen Defoe. I'm forgetting somebody. There were other teachers involved. My dad didn't have any kids at Washington High at that time. And they formed that against a little resistance. But look what the Booster Club has done for Washington High and continues to do. It's just an outstanding organization, and I applaud my dad for that. My mom started subbing for Borghild Johnson. Now, some of you guys might remember Borghild, Nanny Kleinsester and Lloyd Dobratz. She started subbing in 1957. I was a 55 product myself. She subbed for 50 years at Washington High here, at New Washington, and at Roosevelt. She felt like a real queen when it came to that, and she was. She was a super sub. My mom and dad worked hard to form the New Washington High. They lost some friendships over that because there were a lot of people that didn't want to see that happen. But they forged on with many other people that made that a reality. I'll get into a little bit later some of the things why this building became what it was and my involvement. But I really want to applaud my mom and dad. I know they would be very, very proud tonight. Good people. Many of you knew them, and they were warriors to the nth degree. So we remember them, and you can read a little bit more about them. It's an interesting read. There are other guests here tonight. Mark Miley and Tony Miley, Wayne Carney, Kevin Kennedy, and of course Nate Malchow. Dan Conrad I see is here. These are administrators that I worked with and for, and I am greatly honored by their kindness, their professionalism, and how they always treated me. It was with respect, they guided me. It was just marvelous. Mark and I worked together out at Roosevelt, and we've remained very good friends over the years, and I was always touched by Mark's remarks about my mother when she passed away shortly before school started 3 years ago at the coach's banquet. I was in awe that he would think that much of her. He took a class with her at Augie one year. We spent a weekend together, and that's all it took. My mom and Mark were friends for life. So thank you, Mark, for that. I also want to acknowledge Dean Mann. Dean is here tonight, and Dean's a longtime friend and former coach. And Dean and I actually worked on the middle school transition committee when we were moving from junior high to middle school, and you might not like it, but darn it, we've got athletics today because of people like Dean Mann, because there were a lot of people that didn't want to have athletics back then, and we fought hard for it, and we still have a very good middle school athletic program, and kids can participate. So thank you, Dean, for all you have given to the district. Couple things. I want to divide this into how all this happened. My first recollection of Washington High was when I took the gun safety course here in Dick Day's room. would have been around 1965 or 66. They weren't going to pass me when I did my test out in the field. I didn't shoot very well, but I hunted for many years and enjoyed it, and I appreciated that, but it was an awesome building to walk into at night. The floats in our neighborhood, when I was a little kid, we'd go from garage to garage and watch people put floats together, I should say. That tradition has been lost, but I hope someday they might consider that again. Stacy and I, the last float parade in Washington High was the fall of 1973, our senior year that year, so that was a fun time. My dad made sure I had front row seats in the 1971 State A tournament. Baltus Fritzmeyer led, Scott Sandvig, Dave Dummermuth, Tom Bennett, Jeff Wepking, and all those kids. My dad made sure I was out there. We had front seats watching the Warriors defeat the Mitchell Colonels and Ron Wiblemo. I've always felt that we don't know who we have influenced in life, but we certainly know who has influenced us. I am not standing up here tonight because of anything that I did without a whole lot of help from a lot of people. And I want to give you a couple stories and thank several people for that. As a scrawny 8th grader at Edison Junior High, I couldn't do a whole lot. I wanted to be an athlete. Didn't work real well, but I was always out there fighting. I could never pass a President's Physical Fitness Award test. So I rode with Mr. Dave Munson because I stayed with my grandma and grandpa once in a while on North Minnesota Avenue, and he lived up on North Minnesota, and Dave taught and coached at Edison. And one day I was going to catch a ride with him back to North Minnesota Avenue. He said, "Jeff, go put on your PE uniform." And that was a red top and a black short, if you remember that, folks. If you don't, those were classics. And if you didn't wear them, you were in trouble. I said, "Muntz, what are we doing?" He goes, "You're going to run the 600. I go, "Why?" Because he said, "You said you can't get the time to get into the President's Physical Fitness Award." That wasn't the only category I wasn't qualifying for, but Muntz was a track coach. So he took me out on that field. I still go over and walk Edison once in a while. A lot of memories. Muntz held a stopwatch and he said, "Run," and I ran. I ran until my lungs felt like they were going to explode. I could run, but it was short distance. Muntz held a stopwatch and he said, "You did it!" And yet to this day, I never saw the time. Muntz influenced me. He later was my sophomore track coach and I needed some coaching. And he would take us to Colville Lake and work us until we couldn't stand, but we always respected that and it paid off in life. Then we've got the team of John Odney and Don Erickson who decided to keep me on the basketball team in 1972 and 73. What a treat that was, an undefeated season. We didn't make it all the way in the state tournament, but to be around those people and to be associated with that program was unbelievable. John Odney later became the person I worked for at Camp Teepee Tonka and was the best man in Sarah and my wedding. And he remains still one of my very best friends today. He taught me a lot. In fact, one time I was down watching film that year during basketball season. Now keep in mind, me watching film of myself probably could have taken place in 10 minutes. But I went down every day for 3 months, and one day I went to Adram with Mr. Shermo, and I had a yellow card, and he said, "You need to go to the office." And I said, "What's this for?" "Well," he said, "you'll have to ask him." So I went down there. And Mr. Menzel and Mr. Ray Schmidt were standing there. Those were two people you didn't want to face off with. And I said, "What's going on?" And Mr. Menzel was a friend of my mom and dad's. Of course, I thought I had him in. He said, "You've got one detention." He goes, "You've been sitting down there watching film." And I said, "What's wrong with that? It's basketball." He goes, "Basketball's been over with a month." And I think he wanted to say, "You know, really? You didn't play a lot." So he said, "I'll give you one chance to redeem yourself. You can go talk to Mr. Odney, and if he'll sign off on this, we'll get you out of that." And I said, "Okay." So I went up to Mr. Odney. I said, "Mr. Odney, will you sign off? I've been watching film." He goes, "What do you mean you're watching film?" He goes, "Basketball's been over with a month." Well, anyway, I served a detention with Mr. Lockwood that day. And I thought Mr. Lockwood was my friend, and I walked in, he said, "Shut up, sit down, and take your books out." I said, "Okay." I thought we were friends, but anyway, we were friends. Joe Lockwood saw potential in me that others didn't. When I was a sophomore, we had 88 kids out for sophomore football. I was fast, I ran. I had really, really good legs. In fact, Sarah will tell you I still have good legs, but I'm not going to go into detail about that. But Joe put me on kickoff return, and it just was a thrill. It was a light that went on that stayed with me and has stayed with me for life. He was a tough guy. He could be tough on you, but those are the lessons that we learn. Those are the things, as I told my own kids in athletics. Athletics isn't about playing and winning all the time as much as it is about learning those life lessons. You're not going to get everything you want. Look at me. I mean, you know, athletically, but there's so many good things that happen. When I was a junior, Dick Day was a head coach. We had one play left at the end of practice, and Bill White was our defensive coach. I was a defensive back, and he said, "Don't let anybody get behind you. This is the last play of practice." Somebody got behind me, caught a pass, and went in for a touchdown. Bill White yelled at me all the way into the locker room. I don't know if some of you remember Bill White. He coached wrestling and football. He screamed at me. He screamed. It's like, you know, and of course I had the 16-year-old what? Well, I didn't give that to him. I just looked at him. I went into the locker room, changed, went home. I was down. I felt, I made a mistake. Was it that big of a deal? And we were sitting around eating dinner, and my mom said, "Jeff," she said, "what's wrong?" I said, "Oh, nothing." She said, "Say, I had lunch with Bill White today." And I thought, oh boy. She said, "He sees great potential in you." Again, the light went on. He wasn't yelling at me because he hated me, I don't think, but he was on me. And after that, I found out, and that's the way I coached for many years. I was fairly aggressive at times, but I found out that you coach and you show that you care. And I tried to. Didn't always work, but I certainly tried because of the lessons of Bill White. Finally, one other story about Washington High. When I was a senior, I was up for homecoming. I was a little bit surprised at that. I didn't figure that would ever happen, but it was a nice honor because you're chosen by your peers. And my mom was talking with Muriel Newfer, who taught Lit and Comp. And I loved Miss Newfer. She was one of my favorite teachers. And she said, "Oh, Lois," she said, "I'm so glad Jeff's up for homecoming." She said, "It's so nice to have a non-athlete up for homecoming." And that was the year I played 3 sports. So I made quite an impression. And before I move on from that, I just want to give one more kudos to Don Erickson. And what a gentleman he was. Eric, I don't know if you remember, but you used to hold up a basketball and you'd touch it with a piece of chalk, and you'd say, actually you'd hold up the basketball and you'd say, "This is what you know about basketball," and then he'd draw a little circle around the point and he'd say, "This is what I know." What a gentleman, and what a fine person to lead kids. And I still enjoy talking with Don today about that season and many other things. So thank you to all of these people that have made such a great difference in my life. Okay. This building is here today a little bit because of a group I was involved with, the Siouxland Heritage Museum. And those people thought up the pavilion. We fought hard for it. We have it. And one quick story there, about a month before the vote was going to take place, Mary Allman, who was head of the museum board at that time, came up and said, she called me one morning, she said, "Can I come over?" And she said, "I need $2.5 million more to add on to the bond issue." I said, "That's not going to fly, Mary." And I'm fairly liberal spending money. I mean, that's never been a problem. I said, "We can't do it." I said, we're in a tough race the way it is. As it turned out, the vote passed. Bob Kiner at that time told me, had the vote not passed, they were going to take bids for demolition of this building. I don't believe it ever would have happened, but I think we were getting that close. And I always, it'll never be marked anywhere, but I think to a little degree I pat myself on the back. There was a little credit. And she was mad at me when she left. She wanted that money, but I said, "We'll find that money later." But that was a real pleasure to be a part of that. Students here tonight, Lowell always does such a nice job honoring you, and we honor you. It's great to have you. You are the future. Maybe you'll be standing here 45 years from now thinking, well, I remember that old guy talking about, this and that. But I'm going to challenge you. Before I retired from Washington High, I made sure that we had a full set of yearbooks back in place, which Jamie Knoll bought us a nice bookcase, and most of them are back there. There's also a case in Alumni Hall up here, full set, and at the public library. Go in there and find something, maybe a tradition that's gone away. For instance, when we were seniors, Denny Moeller, our head football coach, pulled us aside and he revived the Monogram Club. They had a banquet at the end of the year for every student that earned a monogram in any sport. Just an idea. And if you want some ideas about this great building and your great building, go to your yearbooks. You're going to see things in there. You won't be able to put them down. You'll keep looking at those books and looking at them. And so I challenge you to do that, to keep the tradition alive. My last 2 years of teaching, I taught Lit and Comp, and my favorite project, and it turned out to, I think, be the favorite project of most of my students, was the comparison contrast paper. Now, it doesn't sound too exciting to you, but their chore was to compare and contrast New Washington and Old Washington, and they had to come down here and go to Alumni Hall, 3rd floor. It's open. It's free. Come down here and look at it. There's a lot of wonderful people. They're sitting here tonight, many of them, that have done such a great job restoring that. The kids kind of, okay. Every one of them would come back and say, that's amazing. I love that building. And I said, well, this isn't picking the new building or picking the old building over the new. It's comparing and contrasting. I said, we still have the same warrior spirit. The new building has some great niches and some beautiful entities also. But don't lose that tradition. And that kept going. Along with that, I would show the video, which is still available, of the last walkthrough in 1992. If you don't have a copy, we can get you a copy sometime down here. It's just great. Mick Zur did that with a group of kids. It is the last walkthrough of the old building that year, and you'll get to see what it looked like. There's so much to say, and I'll conclude. I know you're getting ready for the next 4 people that have to follow me. But when I retired from Washington High, the likes of Jason Luth, who's our guest tonight from the newspaper Washington, and Fred Reiner and many others, was to buy a seat. It's D4. And so, when you're getting the Steve Martin short don't order D4 because I plan on getting that seat. I've never gotten that. In fact, I told Sarah if I ever disappear from the house, just come down and look at D4. I'll be sitting in D4. As it's been said, winners never quit and quitters never win. I also want to tip my hat to some friends who are no longer with us, who were very integral parts of my life. Keith and Kevin Logie, Tom Smoke, who's on the Hall of Fame, Tommy Knowlton, Mary Gasper, and Tom Gillen, who just passed away this summer. These were classmates and friends of mine that guided me and showed me a lot of direction. So, let me close with something very important to me. Now, don't laugh. Actually, we can laugh. Like the bag? Yeah. Eric, it's like practice, right? Do the mic and drill. This is my letter jacket, and we're going to see here if it still fits. Not bad. It fit then, it fits now, and it will always fit. Thank you again to the committee. Thank you for everybody being here. Thank you to my family and my dear friends. I really appreciate you being here. Take care.
Well, the first of our 3 outstanding athletes that we're going to induct this evening is Dave Lubert, class of 1987. Dave was a 3-sport athlete, like so many of our Hall of Fame athletes. Dave excelled in football, basketball, and track while wearing our Warrior jersey. In football, Dave was named team captain in 1987. You could hear the crowd yell, "Louie," every time he stepped onto the field. He had a 99-yard touchdown run, which is still a record at Washington High. Dave was named first team All-SIC, All-State Football, and Elite 45 his senior year. At the end of football, Dave gave up his helmet for basketball, where, again, he was named captain by his teammates. Hall of Fame coach John Odney stated that Dave was a great competitor and gave everything that he had every time that he played. In return, Dave says that some of the life lessons that he learned from Coach Odney were to play more, talk less, now this should be politics, and to give your best effort no matter the situation, because the person most affected by your playing is you. Dave has tried to instill that theme into his life, and even today he's instilled that into his children. After giving up basketball, Dave turned to track, and where again he excelled as an athlete. Dave helped to set 2 state records in the 1,600 meter and 800 meter relays. In the 800, Dave's team was the first to break 1 minute and 30 seconds in the state meet. That was his senior year. Dave graduated from Washington High in 1987. He went on to play and to study at the University of South Dakota and then on to the University of Central Missouri. Dave and his wife Julie live in Smithville, Missouri, where they operate a family landscaping business. Dave and Julie have 2 children, 2 daughters, Kelsey and Kinsley. Washington High Athletic Hall of Fame is proud to introduce and to induct Dave Lubert as our first Hall of Fame athlete. The induction will be presented by Jeff Kyle. Dave?
Well, first off, I will not be trying on my Letterman's jacket. that disappeared quite a few years ago, actually. So good for you, Jeff. I know where mine's at. I think my daughters can wear it. Oh boy, that really did not set well for me when you did that.
Here,
No, yeah, take it off.
I was going to take it off.
I don't really know what to say as far as, it was really weird. I got a call from Jeff mid-December. I was actually duck hunting with my dad and some friends of mine. And I'm like, I think he said something about Hall of Fame. And I'm like, God, that was 30 years ago. Do we remember things that far back? But I really do appreciate it very much because I enjoyed my time here. We only lived here for basically 4 years. We transferred a lot in my dad's job. And so I went to Edison my freshman year, then came into Washington, and even to today, it still has fond memories for me. I love coming back when I get to. I don't get back as often as I'd like, but we had our 30-year reunion last year. I couldn't make it. I coached my daughter's basketball and softball teams for years, and we were in the national championship game last year, and so I couldn't make it, unfortunately, and we did lose the game, but that's all right. I'm like everybody else. I want to thank the committee. Also, it's a great honor. You know, you enjoy your days as high school, then you go away and you have a new life, but it's always there. And to be able to come back now and revisit and see I don't even recognize the place. It's been so long since I've really been here, but truly an honor, truly an honor. I also like to thank all my coaches through high school, Coach Odney, Dummermuth, Coach DeBoer, Coach Luce. Those guys, as was said in the introduction, you know, they taught you so much more about the sport or not just about the sport, but about life lessons, and I still do use those every day. I would like to thank my family and my friends that are here today. I would like to introduce them as well. I'm going to start out with my nephew Brady, because he's been driving me nuts over here. Brady, say hi. There you go. They all live in Kansas City as well and made the drive up, and I appreciate that. My brother Tony right there, my daughter Kelsey, my dad Ray, his girlfriend Terry, a couple of my high school buddies, and Paul Ronkin, which you probably know Paul, and his dad, and then Chad Barron and Tom Barron, some really good close friends of the family and really close friends of mine through the years. And I've enjoyed having that relationship with Chad and Tom. You know, because when you move away, you try to stay connected best you can, but you get a whole new life. And I still enjoy today. I come up with two of my college buddies from University of Central Missouri, and we come up and spend time with Chad every summer and play golf, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. Chad as well, for a lot of you guys that were around the mid-'80s, there's another deserving candidate, to be honest with you. A tremendous athlete. Freakish power, speed, aggressive. I still remember the hardest hit I ever took in football. You would think him from Lincoln because they hated us, or Gorman or whatever. It came from Chad in a practice I couldn't see for like 2 days. And we were on defense together at the same time. I still don't understand it, but that's the hit I remember more than any. And then his dad, Tom, when my dad our family got transferred after, actually during my senior year, my family took off and went back home to Kansas City, which is our base. And I wanted to stay, and Tom invited me into their home, and I lived with them, and I always appreciated his advice, and like a second dad to me as well. So thank you, Tom, Chad. Now, one person that's not here is my mom. She passed away a handful of years ago. But if she was here, this would be huge for her. Huge for her. She never missed a game of any sport I ever played. She was I always kidded around with her that, you know, we need to get a nicer car because she took me everywhere. I never missed a practice. Dad was working and she was working for me, taking me everywhere. And God, she was about 5'2", and a little bitty thing, but my God, we'd have 2,000 people in the arena for a basketball game, and I swear I could hear her voice every single time. And she loved getting on the refs, and I could hear her, and I'm like, how am I picking that voice out? But I could. I still hear it today, actually. A funny story about. So I'm gonna ask Chad and Paul and Jeff. So yes, Luber is my last name. It wasn't Louie, it was Lou. Okay, it was Lou. But now I'm gonna be Louie forever, probably. Anyway, I came home after a basketball game. I think it was my sophomore year, and I could tell something was up with my mom. I'm like, what's wrong? What's up? We won the game. We played well. We did good. And she's like. I said, what is it? And she's like, why are they booing you? And I'm like, I'm not sure what you mean. She's like, when they said your name, all I heard was boo. And I'm like, no, Mom, that's not it. I straightened her out on that. We were all good, but she was very concerned at that time what the issue was. Like my mom, my dad never missed a game either. They would travel everywhere. He was my first coach and my first competitor, to be honest with you. We would have some absolute knockdown, drag-out basketball one-on-one games. And he was a high school basketball player, and if you haven't seen him, he's 6'4", and he was a hell of a lot bigger than I am. And it took me a few years to beat him. I don't know if it's because I got better or he got slower, but one way or another, I got him. So thank you, Dad, for always being there for me with sports. You always have been there. When we moved to Sioux Falls, we came from Glenwood, Iowa. He ran the Southern Lumber here in Sioux Falls, if you remember back in the day when it was here. But we got transferred we just got transferred all the time, it felt like, but I hated that move between 8th and 9th grade. It was the worst. I mean, I cried for a week and it was terrible. But as it turned out, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And this is only accumulating to that. But I remember when we came to look for houses, you always talk about, sports and what that means to a community. When we moved to Sioux Falls, we looked everywhere. We were house hunting everywhere. And one of the final decisions of like 2 or 3 houses that we were going to pick from, one was in Lincoln's district. We had a friend of ours from Glenwood that moved up to the Lincoln district, but Washington had been kicking the crap out of Lincoln for years in basketball. And my dad loved Coach Obby. He didn't even know, but he's like, that's where we're going. And we moved there because of that reason. One of the reasons, but it was because of that. So, as I mentioned, I have tried to instill, I coach, I started a girls fast pitch program 14 or 15 years ago, travel ball. I've got 50 or 60 players now playing college. My daughters were good athletes as well. I always said if I could blend the two of them, I would have a tremendous athlete. One was a bulldog, one's got athletic and speed. Both tremendous softball players, soccer players. My youngest, who's not here tonight, she's been a 2-year starter in basketball. But Kelsey, who was my oldest, I just got to share one story about how I tried to influx what I learned at Washington to Kelsey. So when she was in 4th grade, 4th grade girls basketball, so serious stuff here, serious stuff. So we were playing for the conference championship against a team that was about 30 miles out in the country, and they did it on purpose. I swear they did. They started our game at 9 o'clock. I know they did that. It was supposed to be like 1. They switched it to 9. We go up there. This is for all the marbles. 4th grade girls basketball. We're going to win this game. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to win this game. So we start out the game. We're just getting blitzed. Absolutely getting blitzed. They had one player that we just cannot stop. She goes off for like 6 or 8 in the first minute or 2. I call timeout, get him in there, and I looked at Kelsey and I said, "Look, we got to stop this kid. I did my best John Adi impersonation I could. That's it, no more. This girl's cannot do any more from here on out." So I said, "She don't touch the ball, she don't shoot, she doesn't rebound. This girl's a non-factor in this game the rest of the way." Go through the first half, we get to halftime. Kelsey does her job, shuts her down. We take the lead. We get into halftime. And man, good job, girls. Way to fight back. Kelsey, great job. One of the other players on our team said, "Kelsey, gosh, thank you. You did exactly as your dad said. What have you done?" Kelsey promptly said, "I don't know, she smells like bacon." Yeah, bacon. "I don't know, Dad, she smells like bacon." And she said, that's all it took, I guess. I don't know. Needless to say, the rest of my halftime speech went nowhere quickly. I said, just go shoot and be done with it. Anyway, I'm sorry, cuz I love that story. Okay, so here is, and I'll end here pretty quickly. So here is an article from the Argus Leader on March 23rd of 1986. Okay, I'm going to read. Let me give you a little preface to this first, because in that season, as Coach Omni remembers, we were awesome. We were awesome. We had 4 great seniors, Aaron and Todd and John Harris and Matt Baumhoff, and I was the point guard, and we lost twice. We lost to Heelan, who had, 3 or 4 D1. I mean, they were awesome. We lost to them twice. Played in great games, but lost to them. We go to the state tournament. In my opinion, and everybody who was around that, we were the best team in the state, hands down. But we lost our first game. We lost. It was the most brutal loss I have ever been associated with this day, Coach. I hated that. We were all crying. Our parents were coming in trying to cheer us up, and then of course we go on to win the next 2 games and get 5th. But we should have won state that year. I told Jeff, it's one of the. I'll never forget it. So after that game, I was the lone junior. I don't remember who the article was written by, but John Egan, if you guys remember John, but he wrote the article and he says, Dave Lubert, lay up a few seconds later, let everybody with the Sioux Falls interest begin wondering about next year. Lubert said, "Losing 4 seniors will make me the only starter coming back. I probably be the point guard again, but should have more to do with scoring and part of the offense. I think we will Rely less on inside game, play pressure defense, will allow a fast break. Maybe coach will even let us run and gun a little bit. I'm like, this sounds great. I get the paper the next day. Odney smiled and said, maybe I should let him coach it. So that was the start of my senior year of basketball. I swear today I was misquoted, Coach. I swear. I did not say. It could have been something like that, but I'm like, I better watch. And that was my first time. My dad, he also got that the next day in the paper, and we had a quick talk about how to handle the press, and I swear I was misquoted, but sorry, Coach. I learned my lesson. I was good the rest of the way. Anyway, I'll close by just saying thank you. It's been a great honor for me to come back here, one, and for this being the reason is very special to me. I'm glad I could share it with you guys, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our second athlete's been described by one of his former coaches as big, fast, and strong. Tim Marlette, class of 2008, is one of the finest all-time student athletes that Washington High has ever produced. Tim earned 11 monograms in football and wrestling and was named team captain in both sports his senior year. Football first. Tim played both ways for Hermie. As a 3-year starter at linebacker for the Warriors, Tim had 136 total tackles, 69 were solo, 67 assists. He blocked 2 kicks, intercepted 2 passes, one which he returned for a touchdown, and all that in only his senior year. Tim, during his high school football career, had a total of 332 tackles, 5 interceptions, 8 forced fumbles, and 5 blocked kicks. I get sore just talking about it. But wait, that's just defense. On offense, as a running back, Tim gained over 2,500 yards and an additional 330 yards catching the football. He scored a total of 24 touchdowns during his career here at Washington High. Tim received numerous awards in football, but none greater than being selected as captain of the elite 45 football team. And if you're not worn out, let's take a look at his wrestling career. Coach Mark Murren, Tim's wrestling coach, said this of Tim: "He was an exceptional leader and one of my best ever in 39 years of coaching. He was a team leader from his sophomore year on, never missed a practice, never showed up late, and was always ready to work." Coach Mirren said Tim's sportsmanship could be an example to every student athlete on how to behave. In 4 years of varsity wrestling, Tim did not have a losing record. Tim was 8th on the all-time win list here at Washington High, and when he graduated in 2008, he had a total of 80 wins. Again, as in football, Tim had too many awards to mention, but suffice it to say that his teammates recognized his leadership and selected him team captain his junior and senior year on the wrestling team. In 2008, he was all-conference, all-state academic team, and regional champion. I'm pleased to introduce our second athlete, Tim Marlette, class of 2008. His coach will handle the formal introductions. Tim?
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. This is a real honor. I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee for selecting me. again, it's great to know that all the hard work that I put in that building really meant something, and I appreciate that. I'm going to try to get through my thank yous here. There's a lot of you out there to thank, playing 3 sports over 4 years. You meet a lot of people, you get coached by a lot of people, you have a lot of teammates, so I try to get through this. But I start off thanking my parents, Bill and Jan. They came to pretty much every event that I was in, and the only ones they didn't come to was probably because they were at one of my siblings' events. So, and that always included a few trips out west to West River, 6-hour drive. Usually, if it was for football, it was for a blowout one way or another. So, it's a long way to drive for that. But I appreciate that, and they're always my greatest supporters, and I'll always be thankful for that. I'll thank my sister Stacy. She's here tonight. She had to deal a little bit with being Tim's little sister when she got to Washington, but she handled it well, and she was very quietly actually a very good athlete. She played volleyball there for 4 years, and as a senior just walked onto the track field and placed 4th at state. Individual medal, that's something I never did, so it runs in the family. Normally I would thank my brother here, but he plays football for NDSU and they play USD tomorrow, so I've disowned him for the week. Under normal circumstances, I'd thank him for coming to my games, and I'd say how proud I am of him for coming to Washington and doing everything I did except better. And so thanks for that. I have a lot of my friends here tonight. They were always a great support to me over the years. They came to a lot of my games. They always cheered me on and also kept me grounded. They were a great support to me, and I really appreciate that from them. I'd also like to thank my teammates. A lot of them are here tonight too. Teammates are what makes sports fun. It's what you show up for every day. You show up to support them and have them support you. They're what motivate you to be better, to make sure that you're not letting them down and that you're not holding up your end of the bargain. And that's what sport's all about, especially team sports. There's one teammate here I want to thank in particular. His name is Drake Bachmeyer. He's sitting right over there. Drake and I grew up about 4 blocks away from each other. Met in elementary school. It was about a 2-minute bike ride down to his house. We played a lot of sports together. The big one, of course, was football. And over 9 years and 11 football teams, we played together every single one of them. If I hadn't got moved up to varsity as a sophomore, it would have been an entire decade of being teammates on a football field together. We could, junior, senior year, we could practically read each other's thoughts while we were out there. So. And the thing about Drake is he'll be the first to admit it. He's not the biggest or the fastest guy in the world, but anybody who's ever played with him will tell you that he plays with such a drive and such a passion that you can't tell. There's a reason he was a 2-year starter at linebacker, and it's because of his love of the game and the absolute passion that he plays with. And there's no teammate that I've ever played with that I trusted more than Drake. And when I got to college and played for USD and I became the smallest and the slowest guy on the field, all I had to do was think about Drake Bachmeyer, and I knew that I needed to put everything I had into it to be the player that I needed to be. And if I had to nominate one person that I'd ever played with at Washington to have an honor like I'm getting tonight, it would be Drake Bachmeyer. So if you all could give him a round of applause. You guys actually inducted a couple other teammates of mine over the last couple of years. Ryan McKnight, who I will always consider to be the original Washington Warrior. He's the one that taught me about the Warrior way. And I can't say much for his choice of college attendance, but he's one of the best, another great teammate that I've had over the years. And then last year, Sam Holson, you inducted as well, who is maybe the most clutch player I've ever played with. A lot of people like to talk about my 4th down run at the Yankton playoff game in '06. But what really won us that game was Sam Holson limping onto the field in the middle of the 3rd quarter and catching a bubble screen and taking it 50 yards to the house. I will always contend that that's what won us that game right there, was him coming onto the field like that. So I'm glad to see that they got in, and I'm honored to join them here in the Hall of Fame. There's also a ton of assistant coaches here. One of the perks of being inducted the same night as your football coach is that he invites everybody that you needed to invite, so it saved me a lot of trouble. I want to thank all the assistants that I've ever played with. There have been multiple times in game situations where exactly what I needed to hear to play my best came from you. And it could have been something little, a technique, something to look for, any of that. But it's so important what the assistant coaches do, not only in the game, but in a practice standpoint. They're really an integral part of the team. And like Hermanson said, you know, the stars and the head coach get the accolades, but the assistant coaches are really what make the program go. And so thank you all very much for that. I really appreciate that. We get to the sports now and the head coaches, and I'm going to go in reverse order. Track, I think, was my favorite sport. Not my favorite sport, but the one I had most fun in. Compared to the other ones, it was, you know, show up, run hard, turn left, and you're good to go. And it also gave me a chance to compete with a lot of my friends who are female, which is great. I played with a lot of great athletes in that, and so it was nice to, you know, have the girls and the guys as a team together, and that was great. Technically, I was a 400 runner and a hurdler. I did manage to find my way into every single running race at some point over my career. The 2-mile was especially interesting. I was the heaviest participant in that by about 100 pounds. But I had never hurdled before I got to high school, and the reason I got into hurdling was because Coach Gebhardt looked around one day and goes, "Man, we have hardly any male hurdlers." And then he looked around again and goes, "You know, that Marlette kid's kind of slow at 400s. I bet if we shortened it by 100 meters and then put stuff in the way that he has to jump over, it'll unlock his potential." And so that happened, and I started hurdling, and I qualified for state, but that was about it. However, 6 years later, when Marlette 2.0 came down the pipe, he hurdled and he earned a lot of points, so I'm going to take 10% credit on that. Because the reason he did it was to make sure that everybody knew he was better at it than I was. And that's how I scored points for the Warriors on track. But thank you again, Coach Gebhardt. Track was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I loved competing in it. Something I always like to say is I've played in a lot of football games. I was never more nervous for a football game than I ever was lining up for a 4x4. By far and away, the most nervous I ever got was for that. Wrestling I have the best stories from wrestling. I'm not going to share any because half of them you had to be there for them to be funny, and the other half are not appropriate for a family event like this. So, and I don't believe Coach Murren's not here tonight, is he? That's unfortunate. He was my first Washington coach ever. They allowed the middle schoolers to come over 7th and 8th grade and wrestle, and so I met him through that, the Great White Buffalo, and he's a fantastic coach. And I don't need to tell you guys what he means to Washington High School, and I don't need to tell you what he means to the sport of wrestling in the state of South Dakota, but maybe what you don't know is what he means to the Warriors up there in that wrestling room. Wrestling is physically and emotionally exhausting sport. It's the hardest sport that I think you can play in high school. And especially if you hadn't started young and done it as a young kid, and you just start off in high school, you're going to get your butt kicked for a couple of years, no matter how good of an athlete you are. That's just the nature of it. And year in and year out, Coach Murren would find kids who maybe they wanted to play basketball and they had gotten cut, or maybe they just didn't know what to do in the winter, or maybe they were looking for something to give them something to do after school or whatever. And he'd bring them up there, and he would treat them like family, and he would bring them in and find a way to motivate them to just try and compete at a sport that there's really not a whole lot of glory in these days. We don't have enormous crowds at wrestling meets. We don't have a giant student section that's chanting and cheering and yelling. And Mark Murren somehow find a way to make a family out of that and to make those kids come up there and really work as hard as they could for him. And the reason they did that is because they knew that he had their back and he was like a father to them, and he really exemplifies everything that a warrior should be about. And he did it in the dark, in the quiet, up in that wrestling room. And so I'm really sad to say that he's not here tonight, because he's one of the best coaches that I've ever played for. And he is really a warrior through. And so if you ever get a chance to see him or meet him or talk to him, thank him for what he's done for that school and that program. I really appreciate what he did for me. And then on to football. Football was my best sport. And I got to thank Coach Hermanson for not only, first of all, for what he did for that team my senior year. We're coming off kind of an average year. We didn't really know who we were and what we had. We were experienced in some places. We weren't experienced in other places. We didn't really have an identity, and he really brought us together and gave us an identity and said, you guys are going to be lunch pail carriers. You're gonna work hard, and you're not going to be the most talented team on the field, but you're going to play as hard as you can, and that's going to make the difference. And you can definitely see that in that. We went to the state title game and played against the Roosevelt team that is miles ahead of us talent-wise. And we took them to the wire, and we made them fight for every inch. And I think, that's something that we can be very proud of, and that is almost, very important that Hermanson really drove that. And so I'll thank him for that. And I also got to thank him for what he did for me as a player. He really taught me how to be a linebacker. He is 100% the reason I got to play at the next level. The coaching that he gave me for it. Since he's getting inducted tonight, I feel inclined to share this little stat for you. He coached at Washington from 2005 to 2012, and from 2006 to 2012, a Warrior was named to the All-State team as a linebacker every single year. That's not a coincidence. I think that's definitely an indication to how great of an individual he coach is as well. The other reason I like that stat is because it starts with me and ends with my brothers. So anytime you can bookend something with a couple Marlettes, I think that's a pretty cool deal. The other thing I'll say about him is I wish I could look this up or something, but people like to talk about how many kids he's sent on to the next level, how many have played at college, but the real thing to look at is how many of those kids became captains on their own team. And if you looked into that, I think you would find that that's a disproportionately large number for what you would expect. And that's just the way that he coaches. He really creates leaders in his programs, and it's a fantastic deal to have been a part of that and to be honored by that. I guess I'll end with this. I don't have any secret or words of wisdom or anything like that to the success I've had in athletics. I went as hard as I could for as long as I had to, and then I reset it and I did it again. And that's all there was to it. I love to play the game, and I played it as often and as hard as I could, and I miss it every day that I don't get to play it now. And I can't wait for down the road when I can share that with my kids. And that's how I feel about that. So thank you again for coming. Thank you for the honor, and go Warriors.
Yeah.
Our final honoree tonight is Levi Smith, class of 2009. And like Dave, Levi was a three-sport athlete while wearing our orange and black. He was in golf, basketball, and baseball. He earned a total of 7 varsity letters. And Levi never had a choice about where he was going to go to high school because his father Eric taught and coached here at Washington High. So Levi wore orange and black on his back from the day that he hit the ground. While it's tough to pick one outstanding sport over another, Levi probably was best known for his prowess as a competitive golfer. During his 4 years on the Warrior golf team, the program won 4 city championships, 4 conference championships, 2 state tournament runner-ups, and 2 state tournament championships. His most memorable moment was coming from down 7 shots in 2008 to win the state AA golf tournament, which also captured the 2nd team title as well for Washington High. And in basketball, Levi was a terror at the three-point line. As a point guard for the Warriors, Levi could spot an open man at every turn. As a three-point shooter, Levi had a career total of 119 made shots, and as a point guard, he had 141 assists. In addition, his career total included 679 points, 65 steals, and a total of 70 games played. And during his senior year, Levi was selected to the All-City, All-Conference, and AA State All-Tournament teams. His senior year in 2009, Levi scored a career high of 26 points during the first round of the 2009 State AA basketball tournament. After graduating from Washington High, Levi went on to get his biology degree from the University of South Dakota and was also a member of USD's golf and basketball teams. Levi and his wife Suzanne currently live in San Antonio, Texas, where he's studying to become an optometrist. Our Washington High Athletic Hall of Fame Committee is proud to introduce and to induct Levi Smith, class of 2009, as one of our honor athletes. The presentation will be handled by his coach, Jim Trett. Levi, the mic is yours. Congratulations, Levi.
Well, I want to start tonight and thank the committee, the Hall of Fame committee. I really can't express how much this means to me. As was mentioned, my dad was a coach and a teacher at Washington High, and as a coach's kid, I got to spend a lot of time around Washington High, and actually, Washington High School athletics was one of the first things I remember ever being truly passionate about in my life, and so to be here is really a great honor. I have a lot of, as I mentioned, I got to spend a lot of time around Washington High School. Some of my favorite athletes growing up weren't professional athletes, but they were actually Washington Warriors. There were guys on the 2001 state basketball championship team, guys on the 2003 state championship team, and actually I wore number 30 when I got to high school because 2 of my favorite players, Andy Jans and Nate Hillbrands, wore number 30. Even though I'm pretty sure number 30 was an extra large, and I'm definitely not an extra large, which actually reminds me of a quick story. When I was a sophomore, I was playing in a varsity game, and the next day, Coach Malchow actually came up to me during school, and he said, I was listening to the game on the radio, and whoever was calling the game said that I looked like I weighed about 140 pounds, so I must have been swimming in my jersey. And so he said, is that true? Are you about 140? And I'm pretty sure at that time I was about 130. So, so I definitely was swimming in that jersey. But I want to start by mentioning a few of my teammates. I played with a lot of great guys, both on the golf course and in basketball. One in particular that I played basketball with was Riley Conklin, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but he was a teammate of mine for as long as I can remember. We played basketball, I think, all the way back to like second grade. And it was guys like him and really the entire team. I just really enjoyed being around them, and that makes it so much easier to come to practice and to come to open gym in the middle of the summer when you're competing with some of your best friends. As far as golf teammates go, I was lucky enough to be a part of 2 state championship teams. And the thing that I was most proud of with our teams is that we managed to play golf as a team, which you think of golf as an individual sport, which is true, but we had the ability to play as a team. And I think one person that personified that more than anybody was Kyle Cooper, who was a teammate and a great friend of mine. When we were in high school, he was by far the best player in the state, for sure. So when it came time to state tournament time, he had goals for us as a team to win state, but he also had individual goals, which was to win the state championship. And I remember both junior and senior year, we won state as a team, but Kyle got second as an individual. And I remember after our senior year, I knew it was something he wanted really bad, was to win the individual title. And so after he got second, I kind of was going up to him and almost consoling him, saying, I'm sorry you didn't win, all this stuff. And he's like, what are you talking about? We won. And that's really what our team was about, was playing for each other. I have so many coaches that I want to thank here tonight. A lot of them were able to make it back there. Most of these were guys that I got to spend a lot of time with growing up, as my dad was a coach. And I learned so much from all of you. I got to play for Coach Trett, who is a legendary basketball coach at Washington. And I think I maybe had a little advantage when I got to high school, and that was because I wasn't afraid to get yelled at by Coach Trett. So we would my siblings and I would go to practice a lot. And when Coach Trett was coaching, this was growing up, he wanted the gym completely silent when he blew that whistle, because he didn't want any noise going on. He wanted everybody to be able to hear him. But my siblings and I would shoot on the side courts during practice, and of course I like to shoot threes, so I'm cranking them from 30 feet away. And as soon as I let go of the ball, Coach would blow the whistle, and he wanted it dead quiet. And sure enough, that ball would go off the side of the rim, go bouncing down halfway down the court, and Coach would yell, "Hold the balls!" And so then when I got to high school, it was like no big deal if I got yelled at by Coach Trett. But Coach Trett was such an amazing coach. I learned so much about basketball from him and the rest of the staff there. And I'm just very thankful to have gotten a chance to play for him. I got a chance to play for my dad, who is a basketball coach as well as my golf coach at Washington. And that meant so much to me to be able to play for him. He pushed me to be the best player that I could. And I have a lot of memories driving down Sycamore at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, going to get shots up. And so I just want to say thank you, and what an honor it was to play for you. And then lastly, I just want to make a quick mention of the rest of my family. My mom was always such a big support for me while I was in high school. If I played a bad game or whatever, she was always right there to give me a hug and support me. So thank you, Mom. My brother Nate. Nate, do you want to stand up? My brother Nate is probably the biggest Washington high school fan of all time, I think. And also probably one of the loudest. I remember my senior year, we were in the state tournament, and we had lost our first game of the state tournament. So we played our second game in the afternoon, and they didn't let school out for the students to come. So one of my friends was in class, and they were actually watching the state tournament game in class. And They had to turn the volume down on the TV because Nate must have been right next to the announcers or right next to the cameraman. So all you could hear was Nate yelling, "Go Warriors! Go Levi!" So thank you for all your support, Nate. And then lastly, I want to thank my sister Samantha, who's here tonight, my brother Adam, and my other brother Rob. They made me look really bad because they all played like 6 different sports. Well, they were here at Washington, and I only played 2.5. So thanks a lot for that, guys. But again, just thank you to the committee. This means so much to me to be a part of this, and it's a really great honor. And thank you to all the coaches and family members who were able to come tonight. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of our Hall of Fame committee, we want to congratulate our 5 honorees and welcome them into the class of 2018. Let's give them one final round of applause. And before closing, I'd like to make just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, for those of you that received your plaque tonight, we're going to have to ask back that you give it to us for one more year. We're going to hang it on the wall out at the cafeteria at the high school. And then after next year's banquet, we'll send it to you. And if you're out of town, be sure that if you move, that you let us know, let Nate know where you're at so we can send that plaque to you next year. I'd also remind you to look at your booklet. On the back, you'll see that we have a lot of financial support that comes to this committee from individuals like yourself and various businesses. No money comes out of our education budget. It's all voluntary. So anything that you or somebody that you might know can do to help us financially, that's greatly appreciated. Nate Melchow is your contact. And finally, it's a small thing, but your little nameplate, if you'll fill that on the desk on the way out, that'll save us next year having to buy those. To our 5 honorees, we again congratulate you, and I want to remind our seniors over there that the season's just begun. We got a football championship and a basketball championship and a volleyball championship and a soccer championship. And there's no doubt in my mind that at least one and maybe more of the 6 seniors that are over there tonight are going to be in this Hall of Fame in the years to come. So congratulations to you 6 seniors. We wish you the best as you continue your education and your career here at Washington High. We hope that you'll enjoy your senior year. And also, if you go on to college, that you remember those are the 4, or in my case, the 5 best years of your life. Congratulations to all of you. Safe trip home.